This Soonerscoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. Don't miss a moment on or off the field. Make every day a highlight with LASIK at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIK.
Hello and welcome back, Eddie Rodosovich. George Stoya here on a Monday. Welcome back to the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel. Welcome to a recruiting report for Monday, and what a massive weekend it was. You asked Brent Venables about it on Saturday night, but big win, big recruiting weekend. It certainly sounds like everything is coming together for what was a massive weekend on and off the field.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to Josh, just kind of the murmurs coming out of this weekend. I know that there's been several stories up on the site, just the amount of huge recruits that were there and that enjoyed their time. It sounds like it went really well for Oklahoma.
It'd be hard to not enjoy your time on Saturday night down in Norman. Before we bring in the great Josh McCuistion to talk more about the Oklahoma recruiting weekend, let us tell you about a new sponsor, Tushy. Remember, a-hole is only a dirty word if you wipe. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use promo code SoonerScoop at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with the promo code SoonerScoop. George?
Yeah, I got mine, and I can't wait to install it. Going to be installing it, I think, today. I think we also got one for the office bathroom.
We're talking about number twos here, people.
Yeah, it says here on the box, the modern bidet for people who poop.
Interesting.
So, and we poop.
That's a fact. We do. Somebody else at the Stoya home does not, though. We want to make that clear. This is only for George. But all you got to do, remember, a-hole is a dirty word if you wipe. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code SoonerScoop at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code SoonerScoop. Very interested to hear some reports on the bidet experience. I know that we're big
I can't
fans.
wait for it to be set up at the office.
Absolutely.
It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. For the Monday and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Carrie has offered his. We will decline. But we do appreciate everybody at Tushy or hellotushy.com, promo code SoonerScoop. All right, without further ado, let's bring in the Josh McCuistion, the great Josh McCuistion, as a recruiting report unfolds. Massive weekend here in Norman. Josh, welcome in. Obviously, when you play as well as Oklahoma did on Saturday night, I'm sure that everybody had a good time. It's going to be interesting to get the full report on all the guys that were there. Over 70, near 70 guys. And just from a sideline report experience, I can't remember that many guys down on the field before the game. I know that Bob had tweeted out a picture. I think you tweeted out a picture as well, George. Welcome in. Josh, how are we? It was a busy weekend, it sounds like, on Sunday, catching up with a number of these guys that were in town.
Guys, it's one of those things where I was sending out, text messages, DMs, just trying to start connecting with guys. And so different than, we keep talking about that Tennessee weekend and kind of how those felt similar coming in. Very different conversations. Like last year, it was like, yeah, even though the game wasn't great, I enjoyed my time. It was kind of like a thanks but no thanks on almost every guy I talked to. This time, you're like, wow, guys, OU's my leader now. OU's I loved it. I can't wait to get back. I know, one of the guys we're going to talk about is probably going to be a 5-star, and he's already set up to come back for the Texas game. So there's a lot of stuff happening that is really obviously just nothing but positives for Oklahoma right now.
Josh, what was maybe, we'll get into some of the guys here, but what was maybe the overall theme in terms of talking to some of these guys? Was it just the relationship building, or was it the atmosphere? I know a lot of guys probably talked to you about that, but what was it? Or maybe even just the play on the field. What was maybe the overall theme talking to some of these guys?
Positionally, you would get some guys like Joseph Graves is like, oh man, the defensive line looked incredible.
Sure.
The 2027 kid from IMG, so you got some of that. But I would say, without question, it was the fans, just the general atmosphere in the stadium and the energy level. And guys, that was the perfect kind of game for that, because you can love the jump around Texas Tech game. When OU's up by 40, it's hard to kind of stay as engaged and locked in. Michigan was always kind of within striking distance, and I think it kept the fans really active and really into it. And so from the first to the fourth, and obviously you guys could speak better to it than I can, but my impression was just like from the beginning to the end, OU's fans were nuts, and I think that really registered with a lot of the players.
There were a number of guys, including Jake Krull, who were in town. Obviously, the Oklahoma 2026 defensive end commit. They put the picture out with basically the entire 2026 recruiting class that was in tow on Saturday afternoon. I'll tell you, Josh, just seeing Tyler Ruxer, you can see him there, red shirt, long sleeves. I guess it'd be second from the right that's standing. He's a little bit bigger than I was imagining.
I know some talking to some staffs that have had a chance to height him and weight him, and I always like to talk to somebody outside of Oklahoma because I feel like you get OU wants to put the best picture forward, that kind of thing. I was told by multiple places he went to play, some schools and was like 6'3 3/4, 6'4", and about 225. So, I mean, he's a well put together guy. But yeah, you look at that whole group. I mean, you've got, like you can see on the left there, Brian Harris and Noah Best. Those are big dudes.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of the things I came away with, because we've talked so much about 27 and 28. And guys, to my knowledge, there was one 2026 guy there that wasn't committed to Oklahoma. And that's Daniel McMorris. We'll talk a little bit about him. But I thought what resounded from those guys is how strong their bond has kind of become. I was looking at, guys, they have 19 commitments right now. 12 of them are they've got guys from 12 different states. So it's not like the normal Oklahoma, Texas, like all these normal things where these guys have known each other for years. They're kind of spread out. You've got Brian Harris from Jacksonville. You've got Tyler Ruxer from Indiana. You go down the list and, Bo Bentley, in North Texas. So there's a lot of variety, but those guys all just raved about how easily they kind of hung out and got along. And it seems like a well-connected group, even in spite of maybe it not being an obvious thing.
I think before we get to the next couple of guys, let's play this audio from Brent Venables after the game. George, you asked him just kind of, being able to parlay the success on the field as well as, parlaying it on to the recruiting scene. How big a win over Michigan was the 24-13 victory. Here is Brent Venables after the game, talking a little bit of recruiting, and I think that maybe some coded language in here as well.
Always kind of twist me up. So with the recruits, I think there's validation. And, I think they're looking for certain things, So whether it's a quarterback that's looking for a place to call home and a style of offense that's going to have great balance and give them an opportunity to showcase their ability, or an offensive lineman, that can, show their physical toughness, ability to pass protect against some of the best and be developed by one of the best offensive line coaches and at any level of football, or again to play, in a ferocious defense that guys are going to play with tremendous passion and physicality and belief and look like they're having fun, like it's recess, and who wouldn't want to, be a part of that and be developed in every part of your life as well. So, I'm excited for that. There'll be a byproduct of having a good night like that early in the year. Creates a little bit of momentum, in that space. That's real recruiting. And when you're making, life-changing kind of decisions and people are involved, I think people will see, hey, man, I want to be a part of that. I can see myself there.
All right, that's some kind of coded language, because I think if you dive into it, we talked about this a little bit on the Eskridge Lexus postgame show or the postgame podcast about it. If you really dive into what he said there, I think he's talking about Peyton Houston and Cooper Hackett. Let's start with Peyton Houston, Josh. Obviously, he has his commitment date very near. Coming up on September 15th, a week from today, he will be headed to LSU this weekend. Just overall, and he had the tweet coming out this morning about Peyton Houston kind of shutting everything down with the media. Where are we with Peyton Houston, the quarterback out of Louisiana, obviously one of the top signal callers in the country? He had to like what he saw from Ben Arbuckle as well as John Mateer and the way that they used him on Saturday night.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's something, guys, that we've talked about with Peyton forever. Like he had a good relationship with Oklahoma prior to Ben Arbuckle's arrival, dating back to Seth Luttrell and that whole group. But it really, it feels like Oklahoma has really done a great job with him, kind of making that connection and kind of clarifying like where everything stands. Like I just feel like he is so comfortable in the relationship he has with Arbuckle, with Coos. Like there's just a very easy kind of way of things, and that's what I heard from this weekend. Is like the visit went as well as it could have. I don't get the impression that he tipped anybody off or gave any indication. I really do think he's going to this LSU visit with open eyes. He's going to see what he sees. But it's hard to imagine Oklahoma not feeling pretty good about where they're at. That's definitely where the buzz is right now.
Josh, is it between OU and LSU now, or is USC still in the mix? I know he's going to LSU.
USC had been kind of a player for a long time, it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, where would you say Oklahoma has to? I mean, because it feels like OU maybe leads now. I think that's even what Steve Wiltfong kind of put out there. But who do they have to beat here over the next, I guess, week?
I really do. I think it's LSU. I think that's the primary thing. And I was telling you guys just before we started recording, like I've talked to some people that I had kind of thought LSU's focus, for those that don't know, in-state in Louisiana next year at quarterback is crazy. You've got Peyton Houston, who's obviously very talented. Malachi Ziegler, who's a kid that I really like, saw him at the Under Armour camp, and we talked about him way back in the spring. And then you've got Elijah Haven, who's kind of been one of the next big thing kind of guy since he was like a freshman in high school. There's even, funny enough, there's been some Bryce Underwood comparisons with Elijah Haven. So like that kind of goes together. Those guys are all in the state of Louisiana next year. So it's just kind of a crazy year for that group. On top of that, LSU also has the consideration of Garrett Nussmeier's little brother. I believe Colton is his name, and he is going to be a senior in 2027. Kind of hard to argue with success he's had at LSU. So there's a lot for LSU to throw in. But what I have heard is that this is not like a token visit or LSU just kind of, obviously a big program like Evangel trying to make sure that all the, the feelings are okay and that sort of stuff. I've been told LSU is very, very high on Peyton Houston. So we'll have to see how that works. I think, it's going to be – it may come down to a question of not just proximity and him being a Louisiana kid, but also the fact that Oklahoma, like usual, is looking to take one quarterback in 2027. I don't think that's the plan at LSU from what I've gathered. I think they're looking for two of, like I said, Houston, Nussmeier, and Haven being the most likely three options. So we'll have to watch that. But I still think even with this LSU visit, and obviously a lot of stuff can happen. We all have Jacob Phillips memories. We all know where that goes. But I think Oklahoma is right where they want to be.
It's always kind of interesting when we're talking about quarterback or just anything in recruiting in general, the draw to play in-state. Obviously, that might be there for Peyton Houston to stay home, play for LSU. Certainly sounds good for Oklahoma. We'll be following that on SoonerScoop.com just kind of over the next week before he makes his announcement coming up on September 15th. Let's flip over to the other side and talk about 2027 offensive tackle Cooper Hackett out of Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. Obviously made the news a week ago, committing to Texas Tech. You went and saw Cooper Hackett on Friday night, Josh. Just kind of overall, just impressions and seeing the 6'7", 250-pound offensive tackle out of Fort Gibson. It's hard to miss him. Number 65 right there.
Yeah, I don't think you had to say the number, Eddie. I bet you people would have put that together.
Fort Gibson has a little bit more size than I was kind of imagining, Josh.
They do. They're not a bad-looking team. And the reason I picked this game was because Berry Hill has a couple of linemen that are big, that are big physical guys. Yeah, 72 is Aiden Martin, who's committed to Oklahoma State in the 2026 class. They also have another player, Harrison Vaughn. Harrison hurt himself over the summer. He's not playing right now. But I was really looking forward to him and Cooper Hackett kind of connecting and seeing how that would go. Guys, what I took away from watching this game is I thought a lot about like Cooper's mentality. I wanted to see what it looked like when someone like Aiden Martin probably has 30 pounds, and doesn't and is a somewhat of a physical match for Cooper Hackett. I wanted to see what it looked like when someone could push him back. And I mean, like right here, look at
that's the one.
I haven't seen Cooper finish like that. Like I thought as the game wore on, he got better and better with I want to finish blocks. Like I'm going to get after people. This is late in the game. Fort Gibson was down. They were trying to fight their way back into this thing, and they ran behind him quite a bit. And like I said, he had a few where he was putting guys on the ground. I came away impressed. Now, Cooper's still probably 260, 265. He's got a long way to go. It's not like I don't see him being a Michael Fasusi where he comes in and maybe week one he's ready to be a starter.
Sure.
I think he'll need that first year, and he'll play a little bit. He'll grow into it a little bit. But unless there's a big body change for him in the next year, he's going to need time. Now, that doesn't make him any less talented. He's still an uber talent, but his body's just going to need time to develop. And, he's, like I said, he's 6'7", 265 right now. So people are going to have to be a little patient with him.
I hope 51 doesn't watch the recruiting report this week.
Well, it's a little bit unfair. I don't think he's aiming to play college football. He's a high school kid.
Yeah, it's a tough
draw.
Yeah,
tough match.
Tough video to watch there. Josh, how did his visit go this weekend? I think he came out. He's wearing the OU polo, right, on the sideline. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
How do you think the visit went for him this weekend in Norman?
I think it went well. I don't know that they got all of their questions answered. A lot of the stuff like that we talked about last week. I think OU is very much following. And when we heard all that, I was like, wow, that's kind of a deviation for Oklahoma. We know they don't want to get crazy with, like NIL promises and doing some of that stuff early on. And so when I heard like, oh, they want to have a real sit down and kind of talk about this, I thought, well, okay, that's unusual. But what I think they wanted to do is like, you're a priority for us, Cooper. Like we're going to stick with you. We're not worried about the commitment. As long as you're interested in being here, we're interested in you. And I think at the end of this year, when they know who they're losing to the draft, they know who they're losing to the portal, and they can kind of look, okay, here's our numbers. Here's what we actually have to spend on the 2027 class. And then, Cooper, we can really probably sit down and give you a more realistic point of view of what we're talking about here. So that's kind of what I think transpired this weekend. Because, again, let's all be realistic. We know a big part of the Texas Tech decision was, the Texas Tech's doing big things in the portal. I don't know if you guys saw that stat over the weekend where it was like everybody talking about Ohio State's team last year spent 25 in the portal or something, and the reports are Texas Tech's team this year's 30. So there's Texas Tech knows what they've got. They know the advantage they have, and they're playing it. So, again, I don't know that we have a lot of resolution on what's going to happen. I don't think his commitment's set to change the next month or so or anything like that. I think everybody's going to be patient. But I do think that there are definitely more conversations that will happen. I think everybody's willing to be patient and kind of let this play out a little bit.
Perhaps a little bit more urgent is the 2026 recruiting class, and obviously Daniel McMorris just up the road out of Norman North High School made a little bit of noise last week when he decommitted from Minnesota, obviously opened things back up. He was in Norman on Saturday. Our guy Harry went out and saw the crosstown clash with Norman and Norman North on Friday night over at the brand new Timberwolf Stadium too. Just kind of weird seeing a game not at Harv Collins between these two teams. But just in terms of Daniel McMorris, we'll have a audio clip, but we can play some of the highlights right now. Josh, obviously when you look at him, very impressive looking guy on the hoof. We've talked about him here on the recruiting report before. Just what do you make of Daniel McMorris? He made his way over to Norman on Saturday, or I guess over to the stadium on Saturday. He lives in Norman. Just in terms of overall interest from Oklahoma and where maybe things could go from here as he has now opened up his recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, Bill, like you said, was at the game Friday night. They had a look at him. In talking to Daniel afterward, based on kind of like what OU told him, what they left him with after Saturday night after he was there, I don't know exactly when the offer is going to happen, but I'm starting to become more confident the offer is going to happen.
Interesting.
I just kind of feel like it's trending in that direction. I think there is a question of, and I feel like I've said this since the spring, like as long as Daniel McMorris is like willing to be patient and willing to grow, like do the work he's got to do in the weight room, do the stuff he's got to do at training table, because the physical, like the athleticism, it's not that different than, I mean, it's a little different, but there are comparisons there between he and Cooper Hackett. Big, long, athletic guys that can really move their feet, but they need time. They need 40, like in his case, probably 45 pounds. He's a little bigger at the, he's a year older than Cooper. So I think things are going to happen. What I am interested to see is for Daniel McMorris, what does it look like if, we think, again, this is a Tech OU battle. Is this going to be a numbers game? Because if it is, I don't think Daniel McMorris is going to end up at Oklahoma. But he grew up an OU fan. He lives in Norman. He could play in front of his family. All those things that Oklahoma kind of has built in as advantage. Do those mean enough to cover up any gap that may be there? Again, OU is obviously involved in NIL and they're doing plenty of work, but I don't know if they want to break the bank for a guy that they know needs development, like they know needs some time.
Should be mighty interesting to see, kind of which way this goes. On Friday night after the game, our guy Harry caught up with Daniel McMorris, Bill Beatabo talking about, and this was obviously before Saturday and going to the visit, but talking about his relationship, just the intrigue and staying close to home, staying hometown to play for Oklahoma. Certainly sounds like he's grown up an Oklahoma fan.
Great offensive lineman, for sure. It's a winning program, I think. I would say so.
Have you been in contact with Coach B at all?
Yes, sir. I talk to him every day.
Okay, I got you. What do some of those conversations look like?
He's just asking me how he's doing, just building a relationship with me.
If an OU offer came, what would that mean to you?
It would mean a lot. Grew up here, really. Like I said, I've been going here since, second grade. I've grown up going to the games, watching the games with my dad, so it just meant a lot to me.
So being from Norman, you kind of talked a little bit about it. What would be, the potential, to be able to play in your hometown? How would that make you feel and everything? And what would your reaction be?
I'm really just, putting on the state for the map because a lot of people, I think Oklahoma's under-recruited for sure. So just seeing a guy like me who can really go out there and do it would mean a lot.
Talking Daniel McMorris with our guy Harry there, just about his recruitment with Oklahoma. And it's certainly just kind of based on that audio, it seems like this is a guy that he would be open to the idea of maybe being patient, as you said, Josh.
I really do. And Daniel's always given me that impression. I think it matters to him to play at Oklahoma. I don't think he's just because sometimes there are guys that just grow up in the state and Oklahoma's fine, but it's not anything that is a special thing to them. Guys, we all grew up with people like that, and that's fine. But I don't think that fits Daniel. He's been pretty open, all along. He'd love OU to get serious. He'd love them to make him an offer, that kind of situation. Now, again, and it bears repeating, and I've said it with Cooper Hackett, there's more to Texas Tech than just NIL.
Sure.
Eddie, you and I have talked about Joey McGuire for 10, 12 years. He's an outstanding recruiter. He's hired good recruiters, and he's got some guys in the staff that know Oklahoma well and have good connections. So it's not just that. I don't want people to pigeonhole all this as that's the only reason. It's not the only reason. But I do think Oklahoma truly does have some built-in advantages with Daniel McMorris.
Josh, in the scenario that he doesn't get offered, or if say he goes somewhere else, does OU have anybody else they want to go after, or is this kind of the last guy in terms of offensive linemen?
That's kind of been my question, George. And I don't know that I've ever really gotten an answer I would say oh, that clears it up. If it's not Daniel McMorris, you're really going to go with one offensive tackle? Because coming out of the 25 class, I might not have thought, okay, that's a big deal because you had just signed Ryan Foje and Michael Fasusi. Okay. The problem is you've turned Ryan Foje into a guard. So you signed basically one clear tackle last year. So you run into the problem of what is that, you're just trying to avoid, let's not get into 2024 again. Let's not have that problem. So I think you've got to weigh that out a little bit and see what that looks like. But to me, you need another tackle. Daniel McMorris makes a lot of sense. And frankly, guys, him needing some development and some patience is not the worst thing ever. Oklahoma has some young tackles. Obviously, Michael Fasusi, Isaiah Autry-Dent, Logan Howell, and then, of course, Deacon Schmidt. they have some bodies there, but I feel like you need one more to make, like to kind of keep pushing the ball up the hill and kind of making sure that in 27, 28, you're where you need to be.
You mentioned 2027, now IMG defensive tackle Joseph Graves that was back in the Sooner State over the weekend, as well as another guy that's returning from the state of Tennessee, 2028 defensive lineman Kellan Hall. Those guys had to like what they saw from a defensive line standpoint in the, just outright dominance. We'll get into the game day rewind stuff here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel as well, reviewing the Michigan game. But when talking about 2028 defensive tackle Kellan Hall, we saw him over the summer. Obviously, he came and camped with Oklahoma. Just kind of the early impressions of what he thought about Oklahoma's performance on Saturday.
Now, I do want to say, just because I know someone will yell at the screen, Kellan is from Kentucky.
Kentucky, damn it, I knew it. And I don't know why I went with Tennessee. That's a strike on me.
To him, Eddie, Oklahoma and Texas are the same thing. Kentucky and Tennessee to us are basically the same thing. So it's fine. No big deal. But I just know someone's going to yell about it.
I don't want to get in the bad mojo of the Commonwealth. My apologies.
Well, Kentucky and Tennessee people, they're pretty chill online, so I don't think you'll have any problems. I think it'll be totally fine. Greg Schiano could tell you about that. But there is with Kellan Hall, when I first talked to him coming out of the camp, it was like, oh, okay, he liked Oklahoma more than I thought he would, and he kind of told me he was going to come back for a visit, but you never know. Like, is that real? Because this is a guy that everybody in the country wants him. Kellan Hall is tremendously talented. I mean, Eddie, that whole day I just raved about him. I was blown away with what I saw at camp. He is now talking about returning for the Texas game. Like, I believe that is basically planned. I think, and he may come back for another game even later in the year. So this is a guy that Oklahoma is making some real headway with really early on. And again, it's 2028. A lot of things can change. But if Oklahoma has the kind of year that, maybe people are starting to hope for here in 25, and then 26 goes the way I think it could, you guys, like OU might really have something cooking with a player that you wouldn't really expect much from, and from an area where, just like we're talking about, with some of these guys that Oklahoma's got to go recruit from, the state of Alabama or the state of Florida or whatever, Kentucky. That's a battle OU can win. That's a battle they can go in, like Kentucky, Louisville. Like, sure, Louisville does a nice job, and Kentucky's a little bit up in the air right now, but those aren't programs that you walk in and say, OU's got a 1 in 20 chance. Like, it's not like that. So I think there is something there, and it seems like he and Todd Bates are really starting to bond, and I keep kind of figuring each other out.
I will say, just real quick, in terms of the Texas game, and I'm sure that this is another thing that people will be yelling at the screen, Texas is the home team technically for OU Texas this year, so Texas would be doing the inviting, but I'm not going to judge a kid that wants to get a good seat to one of the best games in the country.
Well, isn't
that
that
weekend
kind
of
of
October 13th.
I mean, you're not really you're going, I guess, for Texas, but
the rules are kind of weird. The coaches, I don't believe, if it's the same way it has been, and I know there's been some rule changes on this, you can't talk to players when they're on that neutral site visit, even though they can give them tickets. So it's kind of semantics when it all comes down to it, but he could be coming back for OU Texas, obviously down in Dallas. Sorry, George. Just wanted to get that out.
Well, no, I was just going to kind of add to that. Like, there's a lot of, I don't know if Texas is in the mix, but I'm reading this story here by Greg Smith, and he talks about Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee. Like he's going to.
It's going to be a national recruit.
Yeah, he's going to LSU. I think this year, and you mentioned Louisville, Josh, but it sounds like some of the big boy programs are in on this kid.
Oh, I don't mean to make that sound like, oh, this will be easy because he's from Kentucky. No, he's got everybody and their mama. Like he is, again. You're talking about a dude that is a very possible 5-star. And based on what I saw at camp, something would have to change dramatically for him to not be that guy. Again, he's a guys, we were watching him at camp, and I don't think he'd turned 15 yet. Like, if I'm not mistaken, like he's insane. A baby and
Absolutely
was just
insane.
Doing stuff that you're like, if you told me he was a senior, I'd be like, fine. He's a top 50 guy in the country as a senior. Like, I've got no problem with that. So this is a tremendously talented kid. And again, when I talk to him, and I say this all the time, and people don't think it matters anymore. It still does. He feels like a Todd Bates kind of guy. Like there's some guys I talk to, I'm like, he's going to click. And like they very much so. Like, God, guys, he might be a Brent Venables guy because usually if I text a guy a question, I get like one sentence in reply. Like I got to get him on the phone to get real responses. He sends me paragraphs. He's from the Brent Venables school of responses. So he is absolutely a guy that I think will be back on Norman probably multiple times over the next year or so.
I feel like we could go down this list. This would be a 4-hour show with all the guys that were in town. Let's go to 2027. Obviously, Brandon Hall has done a great job recruiting the safety position at Oklahoma. I think we've seen that kind of come to fruition just here over the first 8 quarters of the season. 2 names for you. Michael McCreary out of San Antonio Johnson High School, a top 300 guy that obviously has an Oklahoma offer, as well as Jalen Scott, speaking of SEC country, out of Mobile, Alabama, Williamson High School, currently committed to Auburn, a top 300 guy. Just both of those guys, Michael McCreary and Jalen Scott, Josh, were in town over the weekend. What'd you make of their visits and kind of heard back from both of those guys just in terms of their interest in Oklahoma defensively?
Yeah, our guy Sam Spiegelman had a report with Michael, who I'll see later in this year when he's going to actually square off with Eli Johnson from Cibolo Steel. So get to see a couple of OU's top targets on the same field at the same time. But Michael had told Sam something like, OU's right at the top of my list, and I kind of thought, let me just double back on that. I'm going to ask him. And so I asked him, I was like, hey man, is that, was that kind of heat of the moment? You were still on campus, that kind of thing. And he was like, no, they're right at the top of my list. I'm like, okay, that's a really good sign. He camped at OU this summer, is a guy that OU clearly likes. I think there is, you mentioned Brandon Hall. I think there's some safety conversation. There's some corner conversation. He's got some flexibility in how he could play. With Jalen Scott, kind of another guy that just gave me a quote out of nowhere, and he goes, "It's the best game I've ever been to." He and this is a SEC area guy. Now, I went to look at his profile. There's not a lot of visit dates updated. Now, I'm pretty militant about that. Like if a guy, I went through and added all 70 of the guys I knew were there to our visitor list because I like to keep that record, but not everybody does it like that. So again, this wasn't his first SEC game, but he's been to a couple, and this one stood out to him. So you've got to think that's an important sign. And he's another guy talking about making a return.
It's very good news, obviously, on the recruiting front for the safety position. It's hard to kind of break down what guys we want to talk about because there were so many of them. It was so many guys that it feels like have serious interest with Oklahoma. There were 3 offers that were handed out over the weekend as well. 2028 Chase Hancock, 2027 Mason Hall, as well as 2027 wide receiver Julian Caldwell out of Argyle, Texas, Josh. And you made note of this in a story that you did from over the weekend. What a massive night he had on Friday night. 10 receptions, 259 yards, 4 touchdowns in a win over Midlothian Heritage High School.
Yeah, a guy that, he's I think a top 75 player in the On3 or the Rivals 100. I'll get back to getting that right at some point. But yeah, he is definitely impressed people in the Metroplex. Again, this is another guy. We talk about it all the time, Emmett Jones and his connections in Dallas. I think Oklahoma is going to be a contender there because for those – Argyle may not be familiar to everybody. It's just south of Denton. It's just right down the road there. So Oklahoma is the nearest major program to him. He can make the jump. Talk about a nice place to live, guys. You could just skip Dallas traffic if you want to go to Oklahoma. You're just flying up I-35 there north of Denton. So very, very accessible. And a guy that, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if he makes a return trip or 2 this year. Chase Hancock is a guy – guys, of the 3 you mentioned, Eddie, 2 are from Arkansas. He and Mason Ball, both Arkansas guys. Hancock's kind of a slot, speedy receiver type of guy, really athletic. He loved it. He and I talked a little bit. I'll have some more and some updates. Once I get through with the Monday Morning Idiot, and we can talk about that on Game Day Rewind, all that stuff, I've got more updates to come. I've got a full interview with Kellan Hall. We got a lot of stuff to go over still. I know a lot of people have liked what they've heard so far, but there's, I think, probably at least a dozen more recruits already I need to talk to and still more phone calls for me to make. So there's still a lot to come. But again, you're right, Eddie. We could go on for an hour talking about all the guys. It was a very successful weekend for Oklahoma.
One more name to get to out of Pacific Palisades High School in California, 5'11", 170, 2027 athlete is what he's listed at on Rivals.com. DeMar DeZurin, I believe is how it is pronounced. Certainly sounds like Oklahoma has made an impression on the 2027 wide receiver.
Yeah, and this is, again, guys, like, I think this is interesting kind of for the same reason I was talking about with Chase Hancock. We've talked so much about big receivers, big receivers, big receivers. I think people have gotten it in their head that, like, OU doesn't want these kind of guys. That's not the case. They want those guys to be special. And you go watch this guy, like, return game, some of the quick, explosive stuff. Like, he's got that, in a big way. So this is a guy that, I know, and Eddie, forgive me. I was trying to think through something. A couple of predictions have already come in for him in Oklahoma. Our guy Steve Wiltfong's made one. I know Chad Simmons has mentioned really kind of liking where OU is at in this thing. It wouldn't shock me if within the next week something happened here. Now, it was his first trip to Norman. I wonder if OU says, hey, go home, talk to your family a little bit about this, think this through a little bit, and make sure. Because we all know the policies, we know the rules. OU doesn't want you to take any more trips. But at the same time, OU's really good about not rushing a guy. So they're going to let him go home, think about it. And if he's not ready, then he's not ready. But what you like is that he loved that visit enough to be like, yeah, okay, I might be on board here. I want to go home and talk with my family about it. So I think that's worth keeping an eye on. But there's no question there is some buzz out there that Oklahoma could have its second commitment in the class before too terribly long.
I also want to add that Steve Wiltfong had a story on Sunday night on 3Rivals.com just in terms of an overview of the weekend, mentioning guys like Cooper Witten, Joshua Dobson, the number one ranked quarterback, the 5-star in the 2026 class. And then obviously Jerry Outhouse, a name that we've had fun with here. It certainly sounds like Oklahoma is very interested or has made a really good impression. Montre Jackson, Mikael McCreer, who we also talked about, Jackson Roper, the offensive lineman, as well as Gus Corsar, as well as receiver Brody Knowles out of South Lake Carroll. Case Alexander, another name that Steve Wiltfong hit on. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on.
It's wild. And I will say the two, guys that are in place to be 5-stars that you mentioned there, Josh Dobson, the corner from South Carolina. Guys, I talked about it going into the weekend. I'm like, he's going to take the trip. It's probably not going to change anything. Guys, he's talking about coming back. Like, I mean, and to me, that's the litmus test. If you come back the second time, I'm like, okay, this is a little more real now. Cooper Witten, guys, there are people that will tell you if he picked right now, he'd pick Oklahoma.
Wow.
And that is, I don't know if you guys saw it. I retweeted a little while. Cooper tweeted out his highlight film from Friday night. He had 4 forced fumbles in the game. I've never heard of that. Like, that's not a thing that people do. And, and he's just and he's making plays in the passing game, kind of, showing that there is some of the tight end genetics there for Cooper, but he's absolutely a linebacker target. If you could find a way that your linebacker class in 27 is Case Alexander and Cooper Witten, Eddie, you could be the third linebacker in that class. I'm giving an A+ grade. That's all you need to do. That's outstanding.
Well, that would be a recourse. Is that what I'm thinking of? A recourse from just getting absolutely screwed out of having a star in 2005 recruiting class on Rivals.com, which I definitely hold Josh responsible for. I'd be hard pressed to think that these guys didn't have, when you add in the environment, obviously, with what it was on Saturday night, combined with, at one point I'd looked over, like standing next to me was not an Oklahoma guy, but Hunter Dickinson, the OU or the Michigan basketball player, obviously ended his career at Kansas. He was in town. Trey Young, Buddy Hield was in town. You had what's his
Jeremiah
name?
Fears.
Jeff Teague, Jeremiah Fears. It was like a who's who of the NBA down on the field on Saturday, as well as Kenneth Murray was back in town. It was
Tyler
Guyton. It was I didn't see Tyler.
Yep. He had to put him on the big screen.
I saw Tyler.
Completely missed that.
Yeah.
Damn.
Josh, I did want to ask
He's a
you
little guy.
before we get out of here.
Hard to miss.
Peyton Houston's commitment next week, I think a week from today, right?
Yep.
The 15th.
Yep.
Over under 1.5 commitments by the time we do next week's recruiting report.
Ooh, that's a good one, George. I'll say over. I think, and I kind of think they're both going to be in the 2027 class. So
There you go.
yeah. So again, Auburn should be another good weekend. It's not going to be like Michigan was.
Sure.
Oh, you put a lot of eggs into this basket, but you're going to have guys like Braden Allen, the wide receiver from Louisiana that OU's been involved with for a while. So there, don't feel like, oh, it's all over now. Like there's still a lot that's still coming. And I think now OU gets to kind of come out of this weekend. Jim Nagy and his staff sit down with Brent Venables and his staff, and they kind of say, here's who we liked. Here's who had the kind of right mentality for what we're thinking. And the coaches and front office guys get to kind of compare notes a little bit.
All right, that's going to do it. Recruiting report. It was a massive weekend on the field for Oklahoma. It certainly sounds like it was a big weekend as well on the recruiting side of things. You can join SoonerScoop.com for the stories that Josh was talking about. This is just kind of, I think, the tip of the iceberg in terms of coverage coming out of the weekend. There will be plenty of stuff you can join for $1 on SoonerScoop.com. And we will see you back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel on Monday evening for a Game Day Rewind, talking about everything that went into the Oklahoma 24-13 victory over Michigan on Saturday evening. For Josh and George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.